Mike Ham joins us once again on our Greetings from the Garden State segment here on Jersey Magazine. Mike, before we get into what you have coming up, have you looked at the analytics lately for your show?
Yeah, this is the best the show has ever done. We are charting on every chart that charts on I've never even heard of. They're like, who's this Jim Monahan guy in this podcast, Greetings from the Garden State? Is it new? Never heard of it. No, but it's doing great. It's been very well received. People, that have listened to WDHA for a long time and know you, have reached out and like, oh, this is so cool. Like I always remember listening to Jim, driving to work or driving to school or all that. So it's been great.
I was afraid it was going to be the opposite, that the ratings would have tanked and we'd have to start building it up all over again.
Yeah, I come to be like, listen, I don't have a show anymore. It got pulled. Spotify won't even air it. No, I mean, I was really happy with it. I hope you were happy with it.
Yes, very much so.
That's
It was
great.
fun to
I'm
do.
glad. Yeah.
So what do you have coming up for us this week?
So this week is a very special episode, which I'm very excited about. Met him kind of on a chance encounter down in Asbury Park. It's Felipe Rose, who is part of the original lineup. He was the Native American in the Village People, and spent 40 years in the Village People, the boy band before boy bands were boy bands.
Right?
And obviously YMCA, Macho Man, like all these songs that are just iconic songs that have really stood the test of time. And really to get the chance to sit down and hear his story and how, he got discovered and then how the Village People got formed. And then, his career now, which is he left the Village People back in 2017, and really what he's been up to lately, doing solo work, books, shows, all sorts of things.
If I'm not mistaken, he's originally from Brooklyn.
He is originally from Brooklyn. He came out when he was 17, and his mom wasn't happy with that and wound up kicking him out of the house. That was, I think, 1972. So he moved into the village. Eventually, he came here to Jersey, and he's lived in Jersey for the last few decades, I think. Asbury Park since the early 2000s, Jersey City also before that. And yeah, so he is from New York City originally, but definitely a Jersey guy. Like he's been here for a long time.
And his character in the Village People of the Native American, as you pointed out, has some personal meaning for him as well.
Yeah, his father, and I'm gonna mess up the tribe. I'm gonna forget the tribe. But his father was of Native American heritage, was a welder in the city. That's how they met. He was coming down from like walking down from a scaffolding. He said Native Americans have no fear of heights, which I didn't know that. So he was walking down. His mom was walking to work. His mom was actually one of the first Copacabana girls, and so music has always really been a big part of his life. And they met, and shortly after his father left when he was very young. But then he did get a chance to reconnect with his father in the mid 90s, and then they maintained a pretty good relationship up until his passing a few years ago.
If I'm not mistaken, his dad is part Lakota and Cherokee.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
And the interesting thing about the Village People is they seemed like a novelty act
Yeah.
at the time. And boy, talk about a song and a whole genre, if you will, that had legs. I mean, YMCA has gone through hit single status. There was a period of time where the Yankee Ground Crew
They still
was
do
doing
it.
the routine.
Yeah.
President Trump, President-elect Trump, or soon to be President Trump, has made it almost his de facto campaign song, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we did touch on that a little bit in this episode because there's been some, uh, I guess, I don't know if backlash is the right word, but the original singer is going to be performing it at the inauguration, I guess, but not with the original lineup, because some have since passed on, and people like Felipe aren't a part of the band anymore, so he's not really involved with that. But it was interesting when I first met Felipe. He was telling me that YMCA. Here's a fact for you. You probably know this because you know more about music than anyone I know. Um, Never made it to number one ever when it first came out. Excuse me. And in the last year, it has made it to number one. So it came out in 1978, was stuck at number two, always the bridesmaid. And like anytime they thought that they were going to get to the number one slot, a new song came out, jumped them, and they stayed at number two, and that song went to number one. And he was listing like some of the songs, from all sorts of like Dionne Warwick and all these great iconic artists and songs and everything. Um, But it's just so funny that 40, whatever, 46 years later, it gets to number one, because of basically social media and all that. And they finally have, that number one single that they've been working for so long to get.
Sold 12 million copies too.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah, totally.
bad
I mean,
for.
you know what else is crazy too? Like their first album came out in 1977, and they released four albums in 2 years. Like when they started the band in 1977, four albums came out in the span of 2 years. YMCA being on their third album, which was like the second one of 1978, I think. And I mean, who does that? Like give it a chance to breathe a little bit. So they were just coming out guns blazing and just going for it. And I mean, iconic. Madonna's open for them. Michael Jackson's open for them. So many iconic people have opened for the Village People. But like you said at the beginning, novelty act. But I mean, honestly, like you can't really get more legendary than a group like that.
And they were a huge part, not to digress too much, but they were a huge part of a major change in radio, especially here in the New York, New Jersey area, because in the late 70s, disco was not a radio format.
Yeah,
It got played in the clubs, and there were some songs that were cracking the music charts, but it was not a format. And what happened was, I'll take a guess. I think it was 1978. It might have been 79. Either way, one of the soft rock stations, there used to be two in New York City, changed format from soft rock to disco.
yeah,
Disco 92 WKTU. And what happened was, and it was a surprise to anybody who was in the industry, it went to number one in the ratings. And not only was it number one, but it was an FM station that was number one. And this had never happened
yeah.
before.
Because it was
You know,
all
w,
AM then, right?
right,
Yeah,
WABC was a powerhouse and had dominated. I mean, absolutely dominated the airwaves. So now you have an FM station playing disco music. And we talked about, a song having legs. Nobody was really sure how much legs that format had.
yeah,
And obviously it's morphed into, R&B and what have you, hip hop and that type of radio these days where it's become segmented, but it dominated and ultimately led to a number of format changes, including WABC ultimately dropping music to go to a talk format. So, I mean, just talk about a cultural effect that
yeah.
nobody saw coming.
No, and like you said, novelty act and all these things, and it's like one of those things where I mean, I don't listen to disco music, but I listen to the Village People. I know that, and like just cross cultural because there was a place for everybody. That's like really what the Village People feel like, and they have all the characters and whatever, so it feels like you have a connection to somebody. And I did ask him, like what it's like to have such a connection to people for so long because there's not many bands, groups, whatever that have that. And he said it's like it was so didn't think that that was going to be the case ever. Was just a dancer in a club back in the 70s and next thing you know, like he's flying to Paris, he's flying all over the world. They're, doing bus tours all over the country, like they're, looking through the magazine, seeing their chart position and all this kind of stuff. Surreal. And, to have that longevity and then, into what he's doing now, I mean, it's incredible, really. It's like almost hard to wrap your head around.
And what is he doing now? What's he up to currently?
So he has his own solo career. So he's been releasing singles over the last couple of years. He has some more music coming out this year. He has a book coming out very soon with either later this year or early next year. He's working on a couple of shows. There's a biopic. I mean, he's one of those guys. It just seems like he's always up to something. I mean, he's 71 years old and he looks younger than me. I mean, he looks great, and it was really cool to just have a chance to sit down with him and just listen to all the stuff that he had to offer. I mean, like the stories we spent about an hour recording, which for us is long. That's usually longer than what we normally go. But we could honestly have sat there for hours after that, and it was just incredible. And he signed some pictures for me and Chrissy, and we're gonna put them up on the wall and stuff. So it was awesome.
And you can check it out this week, Felipe Rose on greetingsfromthegarden state.com. Looking forward to this one, Mike. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim.